The castle was quiet in the way only ancient places can be quiet, holding 1,000 secrets beneath a veil of calm. Good evening, my friends. I am Professor Salamander, and tonight I invite you to walk beside me once more through the hidden corners of Hogwarts. Somewhere beyond familiar halls and sleeping portraits, an old mystery stirs beneath the stone. Listen closely to the whispers between heartbeats, and let us follow a call that was never meant for everyone to hear. The castle was never truly silent. Even in the deepest hours of night, when the torches burned low and the last whispers of students had long faded into sleep, Hogwarts listened. It creaked and breathed through ancient stones, through staircases that shifted when no one watched, through portraits that dozed but never fully dreamed. It had always been that way. But on this particular night, something changed. Far below the sleeping towers, beneath layers of forgotten corridors and sealed passageways, a pulse stirred. It was faint at first, so faint that even the ghosts drifting through the halls did not notice it. A tremor in magic, older than the founders, older than the very walls themselves. It did not roar, it did not shine, it called. Not loudly, but clearly. Up in the dormitories, where students slept wrapped in warmth and routine, one boy stirred. His name was Adrian Rowell, a fifth-year student of Slytherin. He was not known for trouble, nor for brilliance. He kept to himself mostly, doing his work, avoiding attention. But tonight, something pressed gently at the edge of his thoughts. A whisper, not in words, but in feeling. Come. Adrian's eyes opened in the darkness. For a moment, he lay still, listening. The soft breathing of his dorm mates surrounded him. The faint glow of greenish light filtered through the windows beneath the lake. Everything was normal. And yet it wasn't. The feeling returned, stronger this time. Come. He sat up slowly, his heart beating faster, not from fear exactly, but from something else. A pull, like remembering something he had never learned. Adrian swung his legs out of bed. The stone floor was cold beneath his feet, grounding him for a moment. He hesitated. This was foolish. There were rules. There were always rules at Hogwarts, even after everything the castle had endured years before, especially after that. Wandering at night rarely led to anything good. But the feeling did not fade. If anything, it deepened. Come. Adrian stood. He dressed quietly, careful not to wake the others. Every movement felt guided, as though he were following steps already laid out before him. He did not question where he was going. He simply knew. When he stepped into the Slytherin common room, the fire had nearly died. Shadows stretched long across the walls, shifting as the embers flickered. For a brief moment, Adrian thought he saw the shadows move against the light. But when he blinked, they were still again. He moved toward the exit. The corridor beyond was empty. Hogwarts at night was a different place. The usual chatter, the constant motion, it all vanished, leaving behind something older, something watchful. Adrian walked. He did not hurry. The pull guided him steadily, turning him down corridors he rarely used, past suits of armor that seemed to lean just slightly as he passed. A portrait near the stairs opened one eye as he approached, watching him silently, but said nothing. Down he went. Past the dungeons. Past the places students were meant to go. And then further still. There was a door he had never seen before. It stood at the end of a narrow corridor, half hidden by stone that looked as though it had grown around it over centuries. No handle, no markings. Nothing to suggest it was meant to be opened at all. Adrian stopped. The pull was strongest here. For the first time, doubt crept in. This was wrong. This was not some harmless curiosity. This was something deeper, something that had been waiting. The castle itself felt different here, quieter, but not in a peaceful way, as though it were holding its breath. Adrian raised his hand. He did not know why. He only knew he had to. The moment his fingers brushed the surface of the door, the magic reacted. A low hum filled the corridor, not loud, but heavy, like a distant echo carried through stone. The door did not swing open. It did not creak or shift. Instead, it vanished. Not completely, just enough to reveal darkness beyond. Not empty darkness. Deep. Endless. Adrian took a step back. His instinct screamed at him to turn around, to leave, to forget this entirely and return to the safety of his bed. But the call remained. Stronger than ever. Come. And then, another voice. Wait. Adrian spun around. A girl stood at the far end of the corridor, her wand raised just enough to cast a faint light across the stone walls. She looked just as startled as he felt. Her name was Eliza Hartwell, a Ravenclaw in the same year. Known for her sharp mind and quiet determination, she was not someone who wandered aimlessly. Yet here she was. "You heard it too," she said, not as a question. Adrian hesitated, then nodded. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They both looked at the doorway. The darkness beyond seemed to shift, just slightly, as though aware of their attention. "This isn't normal magic," Eliza said quietly. Adrian shook his head. "No." The hum in the air deepened. The call did not fade. If anything, it welcomed them both now. Together. Eliza stepped closer, lowering her wand slightly. "Whatever this is," she said, "it's choosing who can hear it." Adrian swallowed. "Then why us?" The question hung between them. Neither had an answer. But both understood something important in that moment. This was not an accident. And turning back now might not be an option anymore. The darkness waited. And the call did not stop. Eliza did not wait for courage to settle. She stepped forward. It was not recklessness that moved her, but certainty. The same quiet certainty that had drawn her from her bed and through corridors she had no memory of choosing. The darkness beyond the vanished door did not feel empty. It felt aware, watching, measuring. Adrian caught up to her just before she crossed the threshold. "This could be a trap," he said, his voice low but steady. Eliza nodded. "Yes." "And you're still going in?" She glanced at him, a flicker of something almost like a smile in her eyes. "You're still here?" That was answer enough. Together, they stepped through. The moment they crossed the threshold, the corridor behind them disappeared. Not sealed, not closed, but gone entirely, as though it had never existed. Adrian turned sharply, his pulse quickening, but there was nothing there now except smooth, unbroken stone. "We can't go back," he said. "Not yet," Eliza replied. The space they had entered was not a room. It was a descent. Stone steps unfolded beneath their feet, spiraling downward into a dim, silver-gray glow that had no visible source. The walls were rougher here, older than the castle above. Not carved, but shaped, formed by magic so ancient it no longer left traces that could be easily understood. Their footsteps echoed softly. Each step felt heavier than the last. The air grew cooler, but not in the way of the dungeons. This was different. It pressed against them, thick with something unseen. Magic, yes, but not the kind they were taught. Not the kind anyone taught. "Do you feel that?" Adrian asked. Eliza did not look back. "It's testing us." "How do you know?" "I don't," she admitted, "but it doesn't feel like it wants to harm us, not yet." That did little to comfort him. They continued downward. After what felt like far longer than any staircase should last, the steps ended. The chamber that opened before them was vast, but not wide. It stretched forward like a corridor, yet its ceiling rose so high it vanished into shadow. Tall stone pillars lined both sides, each carved with markings that neither of them could read. Not runes. Not symbols taught in any class. Older. The silver-gray light pulsed faintly now, as if in rhythm with something unseen. And then the call returned. Not just in feeling this time. In sound. A low, distant whisper, layered with voices that overlapped and echoed without words. Adrian felt it in his chest. Eliza felt it in her thoughts. "Keep moving," she said quietly. They walked between the pillars. With every step, the whispers grew clearer, not understandable, but sharper. Like standing near a crowd speaking a language just beyond recognition. And then, a third presence entered the chamber. Brilliant. The voice came from ahead. Both of them froze. A boy stepped out from behind one of the pillars, his wand already drawn, though not pointed at them. He looked neither surprised nor afraid. Almost satisfied. "Was wondering who else would hear it," he said. Adrian recognized him immediately. Marcus Flintwood, Gryffindor. Same year. Known less for academics and more for his instinct in dangerous situations, sometimes too much instinct. "You followed it too," Eliza said. Marcus gave a small shrug. "Didn't have much choice, did I?" His eyes flicked briefly to the path behind them. There was no path. Only the chamber. Only forward. "Then we're trapped," Adrian said. Marcus shook his head. "No, we're invited." That word settled heavily between them. Invited. As if something had been waiting. As if something had chosen. The whispering voices rose slightly, just enough to make the silence feel thinner. Eliza stepped forward again, her gaze fixed ahead. "Then we find out why." Marcus fell into step beside her. Adrian followed, though his unease deepened with every movement. They had not gone far when the chamber changed. It did not shift like the staircases above. It responded. The pillars began to glow faintly, one by one, as they passed them. The carvings etched into their surfaces lit up with a dim silver fire, revealing patterns that seemed to move when not looked at directly. And then the first barrier appeared. It rose from the ground without warning, a wall of pale light stretching from floor to unseen ceiling, cutting off the path ahead. All three of them stopped. The whispering voices fell silent. For a single moment, there was nothing. Then the light shifted. Shapes formed within it. Not solid. Not fully real. Figures. 3 of them. Each one standing opposite a student. Mirroring. Adrian stared at the figure before him. It looked like him. But not exactly. The posture was wrong. The expression colder. The eyes sharper, as though stripped of hesitation, of doubt. Eliza's reflection stood still, watching her with unsettling calm. Marcus's reflection smirked. And then the chamber spoke. Not in words. In certainty. A message pressed into their minds, clear and undeniable. Prove you belong. Adrian felt his throat tighten. This is the conflict, Eliza said, her voice steady despite the tension. It's deciding if we're a threat or something else. Marcus raised his wand slightly. And if we fail? No one answered. They didn't need to. The reflections moved first. Adrian's counterpart stepped forward. Eliza's did the same. Marcus's reflection lifted its wand with precise, controlled ease. This was no simple illusion. This was a test. And Hogwarts itself had set it. The barrier pulsed once, then shattered into motion. And the chamber demanded its answer. The moment the barrier dissolved, the reflections struck. Not wildly, not like frightened students. With precision, Adrian barely had time to raise his wand before his double moved, faster than he expected, smoother, as though every hesitation had been carved away. A sharp jet of pale light shot toward him. Protego! The shield flared into place just in time. The force of the impact pushed him back a step, his boots scraping against the stone. Across from him, his reflection did not falter. It watched him, measured him, and then advanced. Eliza moved differently. She did not react, she anticipated. The instant her reflection lifted its wand, she sidestepped, letting the spell flash past her shoulder before countering with a precise flick. Expelliarmus! The spell struck her double, but instead of disarming it, the magic split around the figure, as though the reflection was not entirely solid. Not physical, she said quickly. Not entirely real either. Marcus, meanwhile, met his reflection head-on. Good, he muttered under his breath, almost like a challenge. Their spells collided in mid-air, red against blue, sparks scattering between them. Unlike the others, Marcus's reflection fought aggressively, pressing forward, forcing him to give ground. All right, Marcus growled. You want this? He changed tactics abruptly, dropping low and sweeping his wand upward in a motion that forced his double to react. But the reflection adapted. It always adapted. Adrian felt it too. Every move he made, his reflection matched, only cleaner, faster, sharper. It was not just copying him. It was refining him. A better version. Or a worse one. He blocked another spell, barely holding the shield in place as the force pressed against him. This wasn't about strength. It wasn't about knowledge. It was something else. Think, Eliza called out, her voice cutting through the clash of magic. This isn't a duel, it's a test. For what? Marcus shot back, deflecting another spell. Eliza's eyes flicked toward the glowing pillars. They're not trying to defeat us, she said. They're trying to replace us. That changed everything. Adrian felt it immediately, the realization settling into place. His reflection didn't just want to win. It wanted him gone. Erased. The thought sent a cold rush through him. Another spell came, faster this time. He didn't block it. He stepped aside. The light grazed past him, striking the stone behind with a dull flash. His reflection paused, just for a fraction of a second. That was it. That was the flaw. It expected resistance. It expected fear. Adrian lowered his wand slightly. I'm not fighting you, he said. The reflection tilted its head. For the first time, its movements faltered. Not in strength, but in certainty. Adrian took a step forward. "You're not better than me," he continued, his voice steadier now. "You're just simpler." The reflection raised its wand again, but slower this time. Uncertain. Adrian didn't lift his own. "I choose what I am," he said. "Not you." The chamber reacted. The light surrounding his reflection flickered, then cracked. The figure dissolved, not violently but quietly, like mist fading in sunlight. Adrian staggered slightly as the pressure vanished. One down. Across the chamber, Eliza had reached the same conclusion. She stopped casting spells entirely. Instead, she watched her reflection, studied it. "You're efficient," she said softly. "You make no mistakes." The reflection remained still. "But you don't question anything," Eliza continued. "You don't doubt. You don't think beyond what's in front of you." She lowered her wand. "That's not intelligence," she said. "That's limitation." For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then her reflection flickered. The edges of its form blurred. And like Adrian's, it vanished. Marcus was the last. And he was still fighting. His reflection pressed him hard now, forcing him back step by step, spell after spell crashing against his defenses. "Marcus," Adrian called. "Stop fighting it." "Not really my style." Marcus shot back, blocking another strike. But even as he spoke, he understood. This wasn't about overpowering the reflection. It never had been. He gritted his teeth, then suddenly dropped his guard. The next spell came fast, too fast to block. But instead of resisting, Marcus stepped into it. The light struck him and passed through. Not harming, not even touching. His reflection froze. Marcus stood there, breathing hard, but unhurt. "You're not me," he said quietly. "You're what happens if I stop choosing." The words hung in the air. The chamber seemed to listen. Then, slowly, the final reflection dissolved. Silence returned. The pillars dimmed, and the path ahead opened once more. For a long moment, none of them moved. The test was over, but the feeling remained. Stronger now. Deeper. The call had not ended. It had only changed. Eliza was the first to speak. "That was the first trial," she said. Adrian nodded slowly. "To prove we're not controlled." Marcus glanced ahead, where the chamber stretched further into shadow. "Then the next one," he said, "won't be that simple." The whispering voices returned, quieter than before, but clearer. Not calling. Guiding. And now all three of them understood something they hadn't before. This place wasn't just testing them. It was choosing them. Or rejecting them. The conflict had shifted. It was no longer about escape. It was about proving they belonged. And the deeper they went, the harder that would become. They did not speak as they moved forward. Not because there was nothing to say, but because each of them understood that words, here, might matter more than they should. The chamber stretched on, but it no longer felt like a corridor. The space had changed again, subtly but unmistakably. The pillars grew fewer, wider apart, and the air itself seemed to grow heavier, pressing gently against their thoughts. The whispering had become something else. Not voices. Memories. Adrian felt it first. A flicker, so quick he almost missed it. A moment from his past, rising uninvited to the surface of his mind. A classroom. A mistake. Laughter. Quiet, but sharp enough to linger long after it had faded. He stopped walking. "Did you feel that?" he asked. Eliza nodded, though her eyes remained forward. "Yes." Marcus frowned. "Feel what?" Before either of them could answer, the chamber responded. The ground beneath them shimmered faintly, then split. Not breaking, but revealing. 3 separate paths unfolded ahead, each one branching away from the others, each one lined with stone that seemed older still, darker, untouched by whatever faint light guided the main chamber. The whisper returned. Not in unison this time. Divided. Each path carried its own pull. Adrian felt it tug at him sharply, to the left. Eliza's attention fixed on the center path. Marcus turned toward the right without hesitation. "No," Adrian said immediately. "We stay together." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. This was the next test. Eliza's voice was calm but firm. "We can't." Marcus exhaled slowly. "It's separating us on purpose." Adrian shook his head. "That's exactly why we shouldn't—" "It's not asking," Eliza interrupted gently. "It's deciding." The pull intensified. Stronger now. More insistent. Adrian felt it pressing against his thoughts, urging him forward, narrowing his focus until the only thing that mattered was the path before him. "Whatever this is," Marcus said, his tone quieter now, "it's not about fighting together." Eliza nodded once. "It's about what we do alone." The realization settled heavily between them. This was the conflict now. Not proving strength, not proving control, but facing something that could not be shared. Adrian swallowed. "And if one of us doesn't come back?" No one answered. They didn't need to. The silence said enough. Eliza stepped toward the center path first. She paused only once, glancing back at them. "Don't let it change who you are." Marcus gave a small, almost amused nod. "Wasn't planning to." Adrian said nothing. He couldn't. Because the pull had become too strong. Without another word, they separated. 3 paths. 3 trials. 3 choices. Adrian's path narrowed quickly as he moved forward. The walls closed in, the ceiling lowering until the space felt less like a corridor and more like a passage carved for something smaller, something more confined. The light dimmed. The air grew colder. And then, the memory returned. Not faint this time. Clear. Sharp. He was standing in a classroom again. But not just remembering it. Inside it. The stone corridor vanished entirely, replaced by the familiar setting of a Hogwarts classroom, rows of desks, tall windows, the faint scent of parchment and ink. Adrian froze. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. And yet, everything felt exactly as it had before. Too exact. At the front of the room stood a professor, one he recognized instantly, not because of the lesson, but because of what had happened that day. A mistake. A simple one. But one that had followed him ever since. "You may begin," the professor said. The words echoed slightly, distorted, as though spoken through water. Adrian looked down. There was a wand in his hand. The same wand. The same moment. "This isn't happening," he muttered. But the scene did not fade. Instead, it deepened. Students filled the room now, faces turning toward him, watching, waiting, expecting failure. The memory twisted, Not entirely true, but not entirely false either. That was the danger. It didn't need to be accurate. It only needed to feel real. Adrian felt the pressure rising again, the same pressure he had felt back then, the same hesitation, the same doubt creeping in, whispering that he wasn't ready, that he would fail again, that he always did. "No," he said under his breath. The room didn't respond. The professor's voice came again. "Begin." Adrian closed his eyes. This was the test. Not skill, not power, but belief. The memory was trying to trap him, not by force, but by repetition. By making him relive the moment until he accepted it as truth. Until he believed it defined him. He opened his eyes. The classroom remained. The students still watched. The professor still waited. But Adrian no longer felt the same. "That's not me anymore," he said quietly. The words were simple, but they carried weight. The room flickered. The edges of the desks blurred. "You made a mistake," the professor's voice echoed, louder now. Adrian shook his head. "Yes." The word surprised even him. But it felt right. "I did," he continued, "but that doesn't mean I always will." The pressure in the room shifted. The watching faces faltered. The memory cracked. Light seeped through the walls like fractures spreading through glass. "I choose what happens next," Adrian said. The classroom shattered. Not violently, cleanly. And the corridor returned. Adrian staggered slightly as the world settled back into place. The narrow passage stretched ahead once more, silent and still. The test was over. For him. But not for the others. Far beyond, in separate paths, Eliza and Marcus faced their own trials, each one shaped by something different. Something personal. Something dangerous. And the deeper they went, the clearer one truth became. This place did not test what they could do. It tested who they were. And it would not accept anything less than the truth. Eliza's path did not narrow. It expanded. At first, she thought she was still walking forward, but the stone beneath her feet shifted so gradually that she did not notice when the corridor opened into something far larger. A hall. Wide. Silent. Perfectly still. The walls were lined with towering shelves, stretching upward into shadow, filled not with books, but with objects, hundreds of them. Glass vials, fragments of parchment, broken wands, small sealed boxes, each one faintly glowing with its own dim light. Memories. Not hers alone. Stored. Preserved. Eliza slowed her pace. This was different from Adrian's trial. There was no sudden shift, no overwhelming pull. Instead, there was choice. Too much of it. Each object seemed to call to her, not with urgency, but with quiet invitation. 1,000 possible directions. 1,000 paths to follow. The conflict revealed itself quickly. This was not about resisting the past. This was about deciding what mattered. Eliza stepped deeper into the hall. The whisper returned, not as voices, but as fragments of thought. Curiosity, doubt, questions layered upon questions, each one branching into another. Her instinct pushed her to explore, to examine everything, to understand it all. That was always her strength. And now it was being used against her. She stopped. "No," she said softly. The word echoed faintly across the hall, absorbed into the stillness. This place was designed to overwhelm her with knowledge, to scatter her focus. to pull her into endless exploration without purpose. If she followed that instinct, she would never leave. Her gaze moved across the shelves again, but this time differently. Not searching for everything, searching for what called to her most clearly. There. A small, unremarkable object sat on a lower shelf. A piece of parchment, folded once, sealed with no mark. It did not glow as brightly as the others. It did not demand attention, but it felt specific. Eliza stepped toward it. As she reached out, the rest of the hall dimmed slightly, as though the space itself were narrowing its focus. Her fingers touched the parchment. The moment she unfolded it, the hall disappeared. She stood in a different place now, a library, but not Hogwarts. Smaller. Older. Dust clung to the shelves. The air was still, untouched by time. And across the room, someone stood. A younger version of herself. Reading. Focused. Unaware. Eliza watched in silence as the scene unfolded. It was a memory, but not one of failure. A moment of decision. She remembered it now. A choice she had made years ago, to pursue knowledge above all else, to trust logic over instinct, to seek answers, even when they were not necessary. It had defined her. It had guided her. But here, in this place, it was being questioned. The younger Eliza turned a page. Paused. Then reached for another book, ignoring the one she already held. Moving on? Always moving on. Never satisfied. The realization settled in. This was the flaw. Not ignorance, but excess. Too many questions. Too many paths. Not enough decisions. This isn't about what I know, Eliza said quietly. It's about what I choose to stop knowing. The younger version of her froze. The library dimmed. Eliza stepped forward. You don't need every answer, she continued. You just need the right one. The figure looked up, meeting her gaze for the first time. And in that moment, Eliza understood something she hadn't before. Her strength had always been her mind. But her weakness was never letting it rest. Never choosing. Never concluding. She folded the parchment again. I decide what matters, she said. The library cracked. The shelves faded. And the hall returned. The objects on the shelves dimmed, their glow fading into near darkness. The path ahead revealed itself, clear now, unobstructed. Eliza exhaled slowly. The test was complete. She had not been asked to learn more. She had been asked to choose less. And she had. Far along another path, Marcus's trial began differently. There was no hall. No memory. No quiet realization. Only a battlefield. The ground beneath his feet was uneven, broken stones scattered across a wide, open space. Smoke drifted through the air, thick and suffocating, carrying the faint echo of distant conflict. Marcus stood still. This was not a memory he recognized. Not exactly. But it felt real enough. Too real. Figures moved in the distance, shadows more than people, clashing, falling, rising again. Spells flashed across the air, lighting the smoke in bursts of red and gold. And then, a voice. Help them. Marcus turned. A figure stood behind him, not clear, not defined, but unmistakably present. They need you, the voice continued. Marcus's instinct surged immediately. Move. Act. Fight. That was always his way. He took a step forward. and stopped. Something was wrong. The battlefield didn't change. The figures didn't react. It was all repeating. A loop. A constructed urgency. The conflict revealed itself. This was not about action. It was about control. Marcus clenched his jaw. "They're not real," he said. The voice did not respond. The battlefield continued. "Help them," it repeated. Marcus took another step forward, but slower this time. More deliberate. "If I rush in," he muttered, "I lose." The realization came hard, but clear. This place wasn't testing his bravery. It was testing whether he could hold back. The hardest thing for him. The thing he almost never did. He lowered his wand. The battlefield didn't stop. The voices didn't fade. But Marcus didn't move. "They don't need me," he said quietly. "Not like this." The smoke shifted. The figures flickered. "They're not real," he repeated. The ground beneath him steadied. The noise dulled. And slowly the entire scene began to unravel. Not in chaos, but in silence. The battlefield dissolved into nothing. And the path returned. Marcus stood alone once more, breathing steady. For the first time since entering this place, he had chosen not to act, and that had been the answer. 3 paths. 3 trials. 3 truths revealed. And somewhere ahead, deeper within the castle, something ancient waited. Not testing them anymore. Watching. Because now it knew exactly who they were. The 3 paths did not rejoin all at once. Adrian was the first to notice the change. His narrow corridor, which had felt close and deliberate after the trial, began to widen again. The walls smoothed. The old stone lost some of its roughness, as though whatever lay ahead had been shaped not by buried magic alone, but by intention. There was order here now. Design. He kept walking, more cautiously than before. The call had changed again. It no longer pulled at him like a summons. It moved ahead of him like a lantern seen through mist, never close enough to grasp, but always enough to follow. At the end of the corridor stood an archway of dark stone. No carvings marked it. No light shone from beyond. And yet Adrian knew, with the same quiet certainty that had led him here, that he was meant to pass through it. He did, and entered a circular chamber. It was not vast like the first one, but it felt deeper somehow, more complete. The floor was laid with pale stone veined in silver, forming rings that spread outward from a single point in the center. Around the walls stood 6 empty torch brackets, though none held flame. Above, the ceiling curved into a dome painted not with stars, but with shifting lines of light that resembled constellations constantly rearranging themselves. Adrian stopped at the edge of the room. He was not alone. On the far side, through another archway, Eliza stepped in at almost the same moment. She saw him, and some of the tension left her face. Not all of it, but enough to matter. "You're all right," she said. "So are you." Neither smiled fully. They had both been changed by what they had seen, and both knew it. But their voices grounded the room, made it feel less like the inside of a spell and more like a place in the world. A third archway darkened. Marcus entered, breathing a little harder than the others, though uninjured. He looked from Adrian to Eliza, then around the chamber. "Well," he said, "that was unpleasant." Eliza gave the faintest nod. It was meant to be. Marcus walked toward them. And did either of you get the feeling that whatever is down here now knows far too much about us? Adrian looked at the rings on the floor. Yes. The word settled heavily in the chamber. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the room answered their presence. The silver lines in the floor lit from the center outward, one ring at a time. The 6 empty torch brackets ignited with pale blue flame. Above them, the shifting constellations on the dome slowed and began to gather into a single shape, an outline not of a star map, but of Hogwarts itself. Not the castle as students knew it. Something older. The towers were fewer, the grounds different, the shape beneath the shape. Eliza stepped forward, her eyes lifted. This is a foundation map. A what? Marcus asked. A magical structure record, she said, already thinking it through. Not the visible castle, the enchantments beneath it, the original design. Adrian frowned. Original to who? No sooner had he asked than a sound rose from the center of the chamber. Stone grinding softly against stone. From the exact middle of the room, a pedestal emerged, black, polished, and ancient. Resting atop it was a narrow object wrapped in strips of dark cloth, bound with a silver cord. The moment it appeared, the call stopped. Completely. Silence rushed in after it. Marcus took half a step closer. So that's what brought us here. No, Eliza said quietly. She was staring not at the wrapped object, but at the floor. Words had appeared in the silver lines, thin, glowing script traveling around the innermost ring. Not English. Not Latin. But somehow all 3 of them understood. Those who answer may guard. Those who seek to claim may fall. Adrian read it twice. It's a warning. It's a condition, Eliza corrected. Marcus glanced at the object again. Guard what? Before anyone could answer, the blue flames dimmed. The chamber darkened. And another presence entered the room. Not from an archway. From the walls themselves. At first it looked like shadow peeling away from stone. Then it gathered shape, a tall figure in robes without color, its face hidden beneath a smooth mask of pale light. It held no wand, it made no sound when it moved. Yet the moment it appeared, every instinct in Adrian screamed danger. Marcus raised his wand immediately. The figure lifted one hand. Not to attack. To stop. Then a voice filled the room, not from the figure's hidden face, but from everywhere at once, calm and ancient and entirely without warmth. 3 answered, 3 endured, 3 stand before the trust beneath the school. Eliza's grip tightened on her wand. What are you? The masked figure did not move. But the voice replied. I remain what was left awake. The words meant little, and yet too much. Adrian felt the wrongness of them. Not a ghost, not a portrait, not a living wizard preserved by dark means either. Something made to continue. A guardian, Eliza said, more to herself than to the others. The voice answered her directly. A witness, a ward, a judge. Marcus let out a slow breath. Brilliant. We've found the castle's secret tribunal. The figure turned its hidden face toward him. There was no expression there, but Marcus still fell silent. Then the voice changed. Not in tone. In purpose. The conflict is not ended. A ring of light blazed around the pedestal. The silver script on the floor vanished and reformed in sharper lines. One among you bears the mark of an old allegiance. If untested, the trust will fail. Adrian felt his stomach drop. Marcus looked from one of them to the other. What does that mean? Eliza's eyes had gone still in the way they did when she was afraid, but trying not to show it. It means this place thinks one of us is tied to forbidden magic. No, Adrian said at once. That's impossible. But the chamber had already begun to respond. The rings of light split apart, forming 3 separate circles beneath their feet. The space between them darkened, widening until it looked like a gulf. Marcus tried stepping forward and struck an invisible barrier. So much for staying together, he muttered. The Guardian's voice filled the dome again. One answered the call because the castle remembered courage. One answered because the castle remembered judgment. One answered because the castle remembered blood. Silence followed. A terrible silence. No one moved. No one needed to ask who those first 2 might be. Marcus had walked into danger and learned restraint. Eliza had faced knowledge and chosen wisely. But the last word, blood, hung over the chamber like a blade. Adrian felt every part of himself go cold. He was the only one who said nothing. He was the only one from an old, pure-blood family. And he saw, in the same instant, that Marcus and Eliza had understood it too. Marcus did not lower his wand, but he did not point it either. Adrian. I don't know what it means, Adrian said too quickly. The Guardian raised its hand again. Above the pedestal, light gathered into images. Not clear enough to be memories, not vague enough to be ignored. A crest, serpents, fire, a corridor underground, a wizard kneeling before a sealed door, then, most clearly of all, a hand pressing against stone, and on that hand, a ring bearing a crest Adrian knew at once. His family's... The image vanished. Marcus stared at him. You knew about this place? No. Adrian's voice was sharp now, shaken by something deeper than fear. I swear I didn't. Eliza looked at him. Not accusing, not trusting either, but searching. Then someone in your family did. The chamber dimmed further. The Guardian spoke once more. The safeguard was set against those who would open the lower trust by inheritance alone. Blood may answer. Blood may also break. Now the true conflict stood bare before them. Something beneath Hogwarts had once been sought by one of Adrian's ancestors. The castle's hidden magic had heard Adrian's bloodline when the call awakened, and it did not know whether he had come as protector or intruder. The test had changed again. It was no longer about whether the 3 of them were worthy. It was about whether Adrian himself could be trusted. And if he could not, the castle might decide for them all. The silence that followed did not feel empty. It felt decisive. The chamber no longer waited for them to understand. It had already reached its conclusion. The glowing rings beneath their feet pulsed slowly, like the steady beat of something ancient and patient. Adrian did not move. He could feel their eyes on him, Marcus's sharp, ready, uncertain, Eliza's searching, careful, unwilling to judge too quickly. I didn't know, he said again, quieter now. The words sounded smaller this time. Not because they were less true, but because they were no longer enough. Marcus shifted his weight, glancing once at the barrier between them. That thing, he nodded toward the masked Guardian, doesn't care what you knew. It cares what you are. Adrian clenched his jaw. What I am, he said slowly, is not what my family did. The Guardian raised its hand. The chamber answered. Light gathered again above the pedestal, but this time it did not form distant, fragmented images. It became something far more precise. A memory. Not Adrian's, but one tied to him. The chamber dissolved around them. Stone and shadow gave way to a different place, one that felt older still. A corridor, similar to the one they had walked through earlier, but not the same. The walls were newly carved, the air less settled, the magic unfinished. A man stood at the center of it. Tall, cloaked. His face hidden, but his bearing unmistakable. Power. Not reckless. Not uncontrolled. But focused. The man approached a sealed door, one Adrian recognized instantly, though he had never seen it before tonight. The same door. The one that had vanished at his touch. "This is him," Eliza whispered. "Your ancestor." The man raised his hand and placed it against the stone. The door reacted, but not as it had for Adrian. It resisted. A low vibration spread through the corridor, deep and warning. The magic did not open. It pushed back. The man did not withdraw. Instead, he spoke. Not a spell. A declaration. "I carry the right," he said. The words echoed unnaturally, as though they had been spoken many times before. The magic in the walls shifted, uncertain but not yielding. Then the man did something else. He drew a wand. Marcus tensed. Don't tell me he tried to force it. He had. The spell that followed was not one they recognized, not a simple curse or charm, but something older, sharper, designed not to open, but to break. The moment it struck the door, the entire corridor reacted. The stone cracked, not from the spell, but from the magic beneath it rising in response. The air twisted. The light shattered. And the man was thrown back, his spell dissolving into nothing before it could take hold. The door did not open. It sealed itself further. Stronger. As if learning. The memory froze. The guardian's voice filled the space again. He sought to claim what was not given. The scene faded. The chamber returned. Adrian stood exactly where he had been. But everything felt heavier now, not just the air, the understanding. He tried to force it, Marcus said, and the castle fought back. Eliza nodded slowly, and it never forgot. Adrian stared at the pedestal, at the wrapped object resting atop it. So now it thinks I'll do the same. The guardian did not deny it. The blood remembers. The intent must be proven otherwise. Marcus let out a breath. So what? He takes another test? No, Eliza said quietly. She had already seen it. This isn't a test like the others. The rings beneath Adrian's feet shifted. The light around him intensified, forming a second circle, smaller, tighter, locking him into place. The barrier between them thickened. Marcus tried again to break through it, this time with a spell, but the magic absorbed it without resistance. Then what is it? He demanded. The guardian answered. A choice. The word echoed longer than it should have. Adrian felt it settle into him. Not forced. Not commanded. But undeniable. The pedestal began to glow. The cloth wrapped around the object loosened slightly, as though something beneath it stirred, not physically, but in presence. The call returned. Stronger than before, but different. It did not invite him. It recognized him. Adrian took a breath. If I walk forward, he said, his voice steady despite the tension tightening in his chest, it'll think I'm claiming it. Eliza watched him carefully. Yes. And if I don't? Marcus answered this time. Then it might think you're refusing the responsibility. Adrian almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. So either way, it decides who I am. No, Eliza said. Her voice cut through the weight of the moment. It decides what you choose. That was the difference. That was always the difference. Adrian looked at the pedestal again. At the object that had called him. At the magic that had tested him. At the past that had nearly defined him without his consent. And for the first time since entering the chamber, he felt something shift. Not doubt. Not fear. Clarity. My family tried to take it, he said slowly. That's why it rejected them. The Guardian did not move. But the chamber listened. Adrian stepped forward. The inner circle allowed it, just enough. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Adrian. I'm not taking it, Adrian said. He stopped just short of the pedestal. Close enough to feel the power radiating from it. Close enough to know it would answer him if he reached out. But he didn't. I'm not here for that, he continued. I didn't come because of blood. I didn't even know this existed. The light around the object flickered. The call wavered. I came because it called, Adrian said. And if that means anything, if this place means anything, then it's not about who I am. He met the unseen gaze of the Guardian. It's about what I do. The chamber fell completely still. Even the shifting constellations above froze in place. The moment stretched. Balanced. Waiting. Then the Guardian lowered its hand. The inner circle beneath Adrian faded. The barrier between them dissolved. And the voice spoke, not as a warning this time, but as acknowledgement. The blood is not the claim. The light around the pedestal softened. The choice is. Adrian stepped back. He did not touch the object. He did not reach for it. And that was the answer. The chamber shifted again, but not into a new test. Into something else. Acceptance. For now. But the deeper truth remained. Whatever lay beneath Hogwarts had not been revealed yet. And the final trial had not begun. Because the castle had tested who they were. Now it would test what they were willing to protect. The chamber did not return to silence. It shifted into it. Not empty, not still, but settled, as though something deep within its foundations had reached a conclusion it had long been waiting for. The tension that had pressed against them since their arrival did not vanish, but it changed its shape. It was no longer judging. It was preparing. The pedestal at the center of the room sank slowly back into the floor, the wrapped object descending with it, hidden once more beneath layers of ancient magic. The silver rings dimmed until only faint lines remained, barely visible against the pale stone. Marcus exhaled, the sound cutting sharply through the quiet. I'm going to say it, he muttered. I don't think we're done. No, Eliza said, her eyes fixed on the place where the pedestal had been. We're not. Adrian remained still for a moment longer, his thoughts settling after the weight of the last trial. The call had faded again, but not completely. It lingered now, distant and restrained, like something waiting to be answered in a different way. Did you feel that? He asked quietly. Marcus frowned. Feel what? It changed, Adrian said. Before it was pulling us. Now, it's holding back. Eliza turned toward him. Because it doesn't need to draw us anymore. Marcus crossed his arms slightly. Then what does it need? The answer came not in words, but in motion. The chamber darkened once more. Not as before, not in threat, but in transition. The blue flames along the walls extinguished one by one, leaving only the dim glow of the shifting ceiling above. The constellations began to move again, faster now, reforming into new patterns, no longer resembling the structure of Hogwarts, but something deeper beneath it. Layers. Intersecting lines. A network. Eliza stepped forward, her voice quieter, more focused. It's showing us what's below. Below what? Marcus asked. Hogwarts, she replied, all of it. The lines in the ceiling tightened, narrowing into a single point. And then, the floor opened. Not violently. Not suddenly. But deliberately. A circular section of stone beneath them lowered, carrying all three of them downward in complete silence. The chamber above did not vanish, but it receded, growing distant as the light dimmed and the air grew colder. Adrian felt it again. Not the call. The presence. Stronger now. More defined. Whatever lay beneath them wasn't hidden anymore. It was waiting. The descent did not last long, but it felt longer. When the platform finally settled, they found themselves in a place unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't a chamber. Not exactly. It was a space. Vast, open, and yet enclosed by walls so far away they blurred into shadow. The ground beneath their feet was smooth, dark stone, marked with faint lines that pulsed with a low, steady light, like veins carrying something unseen. And at the center of it all, something stood. Marcus took a step forward before he could stop himself. What is that? Eliza did not answer. She could not. Because there were no words that fit. It was not a statue. Not a structure. Not a creature. And yet it was something of all three. A form rose from the ground, tall, asymmetrical, composed of interlocking layers of dark material that seemed to shift when not directly observed. It had no clear edges, no defined shape, and yet it held a presence so strong it bent the space around it. It did not glow. It absorbed. Light touched it and faded. Sound reached it and softened. Even the air near it felt different. Older. Deeper. Adrian felt his breath catch. That's what it was guarding, he said. The words felt small compared to the thing before them. The guardian's voice returned, though the figure itself was no longer visible. The lower trust. Marcus frowned. That doesn't explain anything. It explains enough, Eliza said quietly. Her eyes had not left the structure. It's not an object, she continued. It's a source. A source of what? Marcus asked. Eliza hesitated, then answered. Everything the castle is built on. Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. Adrian stepped forward, slowly this time, as though approaching something that might react to sudden movement. This is older than the founders, he said. Yes, the voice replied. Marcus shook his head slightly. So they built Hogwarts on top of this? They bound it, Eliza said. The realization struck her fully now. They didn't create this. They contained it, shaped it, used it to anchor the magic of the castle. The structure pulsed faintly, as though responding to the understanding. Adrian stopped a few steps closer. He could feel it now, not just as presence, but as pressure. Not painful, not aggressive, but immense, like standing near something that could not be fully understood from the outside. "And it called us here," he said. "Yes." The voice was clearer now. Closer. "Why?" Marcus demanded. The answer came without hesitation. "Because it is weakening." The words settled like stone. Eliza's eyes widened slightly. "That's not possible. If this fails—" "The castle fails," Adrian finished. Marcus looked from one to the other. "You're saying all of Hogwarts is tied to this?" "Yes," Eliza said. The certainty in her voice left no room for doubt. "And it's breaking." The structure pulsed again, this time unevenly. A flicker. A shift. Not stable. Not entirely contained. Adrian felt something twist in his chest. "Then the call," he said. The voice answered. Was not a summons. A pause. A wait. A warning. The full truth revealed itself in that moment. They had not been brought here to be tested for curiosity, or even for worth alone. They had been chosen because something beneath Hogwarts was beginning to fail, and the castle could no longer hold it without help. The trials had not been about entry. They had been about trust. Marcus exhaled slowly. So what now? The Guardian did not answer immediately, because the answer was already forming. In the structure. In the air. In the magic that had begun to shift around them. The lines in the floor pulsed brighter. The space darkened further. And from within the structure itself, something moved. Not the whole form, just a fragment. A crack of light. Thin. Sharp. Wrong. Eliza took a step back. That's not supposed to happen. Adrian didn't move. He couldn't. Because he understood something now that the others did not. The structure was not just weakening. It was opening. And whatever it had been built to contain was starting to wake. The crack did not spread at once. It waited. A thin line of pale light cut through the dark surface of the structure, trembling as though held back by something unseen. The air around it tightened, every breath heavier than the last, every sound dulled beneath the weight of what had begun. Marcus took another step back. "That's not just a crack," he said. "That's something pushing through." Eliza nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on it. "It's not breaking from the outside. It's being forced open from within." Adrian did not move. The pull had returned. Not the call. Not the guidance. Something deeper. Something older. And this time it was directed only at him. He felt it in his chest, in his hands, in the space between his thoughts. A recognition, not welcome, not hostile, but aware. Marcus noticed first. "Adrian?" Adrian didn't answer. The crack brightened. The structure shifted again, its surface folding inward slightly around the fracture, as if trying to close it, but failing. The Guardian's voice filled the space once more. "The seal weakens." Eliza turned sharply. "Then reinforce it. That's what you're here for, isn't it?" Silence followed. Not empty. Refusing. "The seal cannot be restored by what remains," the voice replied. Marcus frowned. "Then why bring us here?" The answer came without delay. "To decide whether it should be." The words struck harder than any spell. Eliza's expression tightened. "You're not saying—" "If the containment fails," the voice continued, The structure will collapse. The magic above will fall with it. Adrian finally spoke. And if it doesn't fail? The crack pulsed again. Brighter. Stronger. Then what's inside remains bound, the Guardian said. Marcus shook his head. You're leaving something out. Eliza already understood. It's not just bound, she said. It's awake. The word echoed across the chamber, and the structure answered. The crack widened just slightly. Enough for something to be seen. Not clearly. Not fully, but enough. A movement. Slow. Measured. Not chaotic. Watching. Adrian felt it lock onto him. Not physically, but undeniably. Marcus raised his wand. I don't like this. That won't help, Eliza said quickly. This isn't something we can fight. Then what is it? Marcus demanded. Eliza hesitated. For the first time since entering this place, she did not have an answer ready. It's not dark magic, she said finally. Not exactly. Adrian took a step forward. The pull deepened. Adrian, Marcus said sharply, don't. But Adrian didn't stop. He wasn't being controlled. He knew that much. But something was responding to him. To his presence. To his blood. The crack flared. The light inside it shifted. Not random, not chaotic, but focused. Marcus moved quickly, stepping in front of him. You're not getting any closer to that. Adrian stopped. But not because of Marcus. Because the structure itself reacted. The ground beneath them trembled, not violently, but enough to feel. The lines in the floor flared bright, then dimmed again. The Guardian's voice returned. Proximity accelerates instability. Marcus exhaled sharply. Brilliant, so standing near it makes it worse. Eliza's mind was racing now. No, she said, not just standing near it. She looked at Adrian. It's reacting to you. The truth settled between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. Adrian felt it too. That's why it called me first, he said. The crack pulsed again. Stronger now, and why it's opening now. Marcus lowered his wand slightly, but didn't drop it. So what? Your ancestor tried to break in, and now this thing thinks you're here to finish the job? Adrian shook his head. No. He looked at the structure. At the movement behind the light. It doesn't think that. Eliza's voice was quiet. Then what does it think? Adrian didn't answer immediately, because the realization came slowly. Not forced. Not sudden. But certain. It thinks I can open it, he said. Silence. Marcus stared at him. That's not better. No, Eliza agreed. It's not. The Guardian spoke again. The inheritance is not intent, but it is access. Adrian clenched his hand slightly. So I'm the key. Yes. The word echoed without hesitation. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. All right, that's enough. We're not opening anything. We reinforce whatever we can and get out. It's not that simple, Eliza said. She was watching the structure again. Watching the crack. Watching the way the light within it shifted, not wildly, but deliberately. It's not trying to break free, she said slowly. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Eliza stepped closer, carefully, not too close. Look at it, she said. It's not forcing the structure apart, it's waiting. Adrian saw it too now. The movement inside the crack. Not violent. Not desperate. Measured. Patient. It's not attacking the seal, he said. It's waiting for it to be opened, Eliza finished. Marcus let out a slow breath. That's worse. The Guardian's voice returned, quieter now. The lower trust was never meant to hold forever. Eliza's head snapped toward the sound. What? The Founders bound what they did not fully understand, the voice continued. Not to destroy it, not to use it, but to delay it. Adrian felt something shift inside him. Delay what? The answer came without hesitation. The moment of choosing. The crack pulsed once more, and this time, the light did not flicker. It held steady, waiting. The conflict had changed again. It was no longer about proving themselves, no longer about resisting the past. Now it was about a decision that could not be undone. Leave it sealed and risk the structure failing on its own. Or open it and face whatever had been waiting beneath Hogwarts longer than anyone had known. Marcus looked at both of them. We're not seriously considering this. Eliza didn't answer. Adrian didn't move. Because deep down, they both already were. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The chamber seemed to lean inward around the silence, as though the ancient space itself understood the weight of what had been placed before them. The dark structure stood at the center of it all, split now by that thin and terrible seam of light. Nothing emerged, nothing lunged, nothing cried out. It simply waited. That, somehow, was worse. Marcus was the first to move. He took 2 steps away from the crack and turned sharply toward the others, his voice low and tense. No, he said, absolutely not. Whatever that thing is, it has spent centuries under Hogwarts for a reason. We are not opening it because some buried guardian has decided this is the right dramatic moment. The word dramatic sounded strangely small in that place, yet it grounded the air for a heartbeat. Eliza did not answer at once. She had crouched near one of the glowing lines in the floor, studying the pattern as it brightened and dimmed beneath the stone, like a pulse growing less regular by the minute. It may not matter what we want, she said quietly. If the seal is already failing, then refusing to choose might still be a choice. Marcus stared at her. You cannot mean that. I mean, Eliza replied, standing again, that if this structure collapses on its own, whatever is inside could break free without any control at all. If it is released deliberately, there may be a way to guide what happens next. Marcus let out a short, disbelieving breath. Guide it? Eliza, we don't even know what it is. Adrian was still looking at the crack. Not because he trusted it. Not because he wanted it open. But because the longer he watched, the more certain he became that there was intention inside that light. Not human intention, not anything simple, yet not madness either. No frenzy, no rage. A waiting mind. And somehow it knew him. The Guardian said the Founders delayed this, Adrian said at last. Not ended it. Marcus turned to him. And you're taking that at face value? No, Adrian said. I'm listening. The Guardian's voice came at once, as though it had only been waiting to be addressed. The binding was made to preserve the school until those who answered by will and not by lineage alone could stand before the trust. Eliza's eyes narrowed. Then this was always meant to happen eventually. Yes. Marcus looked upward, as if patience itself might be hanging from the unseen ceiling. Wonderful. An ancient plan by long-dead geniuses. Those always end well. But even he was listening now. Adrian stepped no closer to the structure, yet his focus sharpened. Then tell us the truth. All of it. The chamber dimmed slightly. The glowing veins in the floor spread outward from the base of the dark structure, forming a wider pattern, circles within circles, and at their edges symbols that shifted too quickly to memorize. Above the crack, light gathered and unfolded into images once more. This time they were clearer. 4 figures stood in a chamber much like this one, though the stone was newer and the seal unbroken. Their features were not distinct, yet they needed no names spoken. The founders were unmistakable in bearing alone. One stern and still, one watchful, one broad-shouldered, one graceful as flame. They stood around the black structure with wands raised, not in battle, but in labor. They found the source beneath the hill before the castle was raised, the Guardian said, a current of old magic without master or form. It answered thought, memory, fear, and desire. Untethered, it changed what lived near it, strengthened what was built over it, distorted what was carried into it. The images shifted. They saw stone walls rising overhead, towers taking shape, spellwork woven downward rather than outward, every corridor and arch of Hogwarts binding itself like roots around the thing below. They did not dare destroy it, the Guardian continued. They could not safely wield it. So they anchored the school upon it and named the school its keeper. Eliza spoke softly, half to herself. That's why Hogwarts feels alive. The images flickered. A second scene appeared. Not the founders now, but later generations. Wizards moving through secret chambers, renewing wards, speaking vows, passing on knowledge not written in books. Then the line weakened. Fewer figures, less certainty. Secrets lost over time not to theft, but to forgetting. Knowledge thinned, said the Guardian. The outer castle endured. The inner trust remained. Then one line sought entry by claim. The image shifted again to Adrian's ancestor, hand against stone, wand raised in failed ambition. The same moment they had already witnessed, but now they saw what followed. After the attempt, the hidden wards changed, sealing deeper and severing much of what remained of the old custodianship. The images vanished. Marcus folded his arms tighter. So one fool ruined the system for everyone. One act of hunger, the Guardian said, made trust retreat. Adrian looked down, feeling the words like a weight laid deliberately at his feet. Eliza turned to him at once, as if sensing the shift in him. That was not you. No, Adrian said, but it is my blood that woke this. The crack brightened slightly, as if in answer. Marcus noticed. Then stop standing there like it's speaking to you. It is, Adrian said. The words came before he had fully chosen them, and when they were spoken, the chamber grew very still. Eliza took a step toward him. What do you mean? Adrian pressed a hand against his own chest, then lowered it again. Not in words, but I can feel intention. It doesn't want out the way a trapped thing would want out. It wants contact. Marcus gave him a flat look. That is not reassuring. No, Eliza said, watching Adrian carefully. But it may matter. She turned back to the structure. If this source responds to thought and memory, then the founders didn't build a prison. They built a filter, a way to make sure that if contact ever happened, it happened through people who could choose, restrain themselves, and refuse power. Marcus glanced between them. You are both getting far too comfortable with the possibility that the castle buried a thinking storm under a school. Adrian almost smiled, but the expression died before it fully formed. Comfortable isn't the word. The floor trembled. Not hard. Enough. The crack widened by the width of a finger. Light spilled through, pale at first and then threaded with deeper color, silver, gold, and a strange blue-white that did not look like ordinary magic at all. The air rushed inward toward it, and every torchless shadow in the chamber bent slightly in the same direction. Marcus raised his wand again. That decides it. We move away now. But the guardian spoke over him. The choice cannot be deferred much longer. Eliza faced the unseen voice. What exactly is the choice? Say it plainly. So the guardian did. 1 bearing access may open the trust. 3 may stand as witnesses and bind its answer. If none choose, the failing seal will break without witness, without balance, and without law. Marcus swore under his breath. Adrian went cold. And if I open it? The answer came at once. Then what lies beneath Hogwarts will answer those who stand before it. Eliza's voice was steady, though only just. Answer how? The crack pulsed once. Then, from within it, a shape of light lifted, not emerging fully, only pressing near enough to be seen. Not a face, not hands. More like the beginning of one thought taking form before deciding against it. The chamber seemed to listen to it. And then the guardian spoke the single most dangerous truth they had heard all night. In the manner of your choosing. Silence crashed over them. Marcus stared. No. Eliza did not blink. That's why it's dangerous. Yes, said the guardian. Because it doesn't simply give power, she said, understanding all at once. It reflects the mind that reaches it. Yes. Adrian felt the meaning of that settle through every part of him. This was not a beast in chains, not a relic, not a cursed treasure. It was older and stranger than any of those things, a reservoir of responding magic. And the founders had feared it not because it was evil, but because it could become what the wrong person asked of it. Marcus looked at Adrian with grim disbelief. Then you absolutely cannot be the only one deciding. I won't be, Adrian said. Eliza stepped closer to both of them now, drawing the 3 into something like a circle, though the dark structure still towered before them. That's the final test, she said. Not whether one of us can open it, whether all 3 of us can hold to the same purpose. Marcus frowned. And what purpose would that be? Eliza looked from him to Adrian. Not to use it, she said. Not to claim it. To give Hogwarts a keeper again, and nothing more. The words hung there. Simple. Terrifying. Necessary. Adrian looked at the crack of light, at the thing beneath the school that had waited through generations of secrecy, ambition, and neglect. Then he looked at Marcus and Eliza, the 2 who had answered the call not by blood, but by choice. We open it together, he said. Or not at all. Marcus was quiet for several seconds. Then, with visible reluctance, he gave one tight nod. Eliza did the same. The chamber brightened. The lines in the floor blazed outward from beneath their feet, connecting the 3 of them to the structure in a web of silver fire. Somewhere deep below, old stone shifted like a giant drawing breath after centuries of sleep. And the crack began, slowly, to widen. The widening of the crack did not bring chaos. It brought clarity. Light did not burst outward. It unfolded, layer by layer, as if something long restrained was choosing how to be seen rather than forcing its way into sight. The chamber responded in kind. The glowing lines in the floor steadied, forming a complete pattern now, each path linking Adrian, Eliza, and Marcus directly to the structure. A triangle. Balanced. Intentional. The air grew warmer, not with heat, but with presence. The pressure that had once felt heavy now felt focused, like standing at the center of something vast that had finally taken notice. Marcus did not lower his wand, but his grip changed, less defensive, more ready. Tell me we can still stop this, he said. Eliza answered without hesitation. We can, but not by stepping back. Adrian nodded once. Then we don't step back. The crack widened further. The surface of the structure did not break apart. It parted, layers sliding aside like stone remembering how to move, revealing not emptiness, but depth. Light flowed through the opening now, not blinding, not wild, but controlled, almost deliberate. And within it, form began to gather. Not solid. Not fixed. Something between thought and shape. The Guardian's voice returned, quieter than before. The trust opens. Hold to purpose. Oh, Adrian stepped forward. This time Marcus did not stop him. Eliza moved with him. All three stood at the edge of the opening now, the triangle beneath their feet burning brighter, anchoring them in place. The light inside shifted. And then, it answered. Not in speech. In presence. Each of them felt it differently. Adrian felt recognition, like something ancient turning toward a familiar echo. Eliza felt complexity, layers of possibility unfolding all at once, too vast to follow, yet not overwhelming. Marcus felt weight, immense, unyielding, as if standing before something that could crush or support with equal ease. The conflict revealed itself clearly now. This was not about opening or closing. It was about what they would allow it to become. The light moved closer, not leaving the structure, reaching toward them. Adrian raised his hand, but stopped before touching it. What are you? He asked. The answer came, not as words, but as understanding placed directly into his mind. Not a name. Not a definition. A truth. I am what remains when magic is not given form. Adrian inhaled sharply. Eliza's voice was almost a whisper. It's not a being, it's a foundation. Marcus frowned. That doesn't make it safe. No, Adrian said. It doesn't. The light shifted again. This time it responded to them more clearly. 3 threads extended from it, thin, precise, each one aligning with one of them. Not touching. Waiting. Eliza understood first. It's asking us to define the bond, she said. Marcus shook his head slightly. Of course it is. Adrian looked at the thread before him. This is the final choice, he said. The Guardian confirmed it. Bind the trust and become its keepers, or withdraw and leave it to fail. Marcus let out a slow breath. No pressure, then. Eliza stepped closer to the thread of light. But it's not asking for control, she said. It's asking for limits. Adrian nodded. For rules. Marcus looked between them. And if we get those wrong? The answer came from the light itself. Not spoken. Felt. Then I will become what you fail to restrain. Silence followed. Heavy. Real. Eliza spoke first. Then we don't define it by power, she said. We define it by purpose. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Which is? She met his gaze. To protect the school. Nothing more. Adrian looked at the thread before him. And never to be used beyond that, he added. Marcus hesitated. Then nodded once. No exceptions. The threads of light brightened. Responding. Accepting. But not yet binding. Adrian stepped forward fully now. This is the condition, he said, his voice steady. You remain bound to Hogwarts. You do not extend beyond it. You do not act unless called by those who hold this bond, and only to protect. Eliza continued. You do not answer fear with destruction. You do not answer ambition with power. You reflect only what is chosen together. Marcus finished it. And if one of us ever tries to use you for anything else, you stop answering. The light pulsed. Once. Twice. Then, it changed. The threads extended further, touching them now. Adrian felt it first, not pain, not force, but connection. A link forming, not into him, but through him, anchored by his choice. Eliza felt the structure of it, rules forming, not written, but understood. Marcus felt the weight settle, something vast choosing to remain contained. The binding completed. The light withdrew slightly. The structure shifted back into place, not sealed, but closed with intent. The crack faded. Not gone, but no longer breaking. The chamber stabilized. The lines in the floor dimmed to a steady glow, and the presence quieted. Not gone, but resting. The Guardian spoke one final time. The trust is renewed. Adrian lowered his hand. Eliza stepped back. Marcus exhaled slowly. None of them spoke for a moment, because they all understood the same thing. This was not over. It would never truly be over. They had not destroyed what lay beneath Hogwarts. They had not escaped it. They had chosen to stand between it and everything else. Adrian looked at the structure one last time. "It's stable," he said. "For now," Eliza replied. Marcus nodded. "For as long as we hold to it." The chamber began to shift again. Not into another trial. Not into another test. But upward. The floor beneath them rose slowly, carrying them back toward the castle above. Toward Hogwarts. Toward the world that did not know what lay beneath it. And as they ascended, one truth remained clear between them. They had answered the call. And now, they were part of it. The ascent was slower than the descent. Not in distance, but in weight. The platform of stone carried them upward through layers of silence that no longer felt empty. The presence beneath them had quieted, yet it had not withdrawn. It remained steady and aware, like a deep current beneath still water. None of them spoke at first. There was no need. The bond they had formed was not visible, not marked by light or sound, but it was there, subtle, constant. Not a chain, not a burden, but a responsibility that did not fade when ignored. Marcus was the first to break the silence. "So," he said, his voice quieter than usual, "we just walk back to bed after this?" Eliza almost smiled. "Something like that," she replied. Adrian did not answer. He was watching the faint lines of magic in the stone around them, the way they dimmed and shifted as the platform rose. Before, he might have missed it entirely. Now he could feel it, not fully, not clearly, but enough. The castle. Not just as walls and corridors, as something connected. Alive in a way that was not life. "You feel it too," Eliza said softly, without looking at him. Adrian nodded. Marcus glanced between them. "Feel what?" "The structure," Eliza explained. "The magic holding everything together." Marcus frowned. "You're telling me we can just sense it now?" "Not everything," Adrian said, "but enough." The platform slowed. The chamber above came into view once more, the circular room with its pale stone floor and silent torches. But it was different now. Not in shape. In presence. The tension that had once filled it was gone. What remained was something quieter. Resolved. The The platform settled into place without a sound. The moment their feet touched the floor, the faint glow beneath them faded entirely, leaving only ordinary stone. Marcus stepped off first, testing the ground as if expecting it to shift again. "Well," he said, "if this is what normal feels like now, I'm not sure I like it." Eliza walked toward the center of the room, glancing up at the dome above. The shifting constellations had stilled, forming once more the outline of Hogwarts, but now it was clear, stable, complete. "It's finished," she said. Adrian joined her. "No," he said quietly. "It's held." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "There's a difference?" "Yes," Eliza answered. "One can end. The other needs to be maintained." The truth of it settled in. They had not solved the problem. They had taken responsibility for it. The archways around the chamber began to reappear. 3 at first, then merging into 1. The path back to the upper corridors revealed itself, simple now, without distortion or hidden turns. Marcus let out a breath. "That's our way out." But none of them moved immediately. Adrian looked once more at the place where the pedestal had been. "It's still there," he said. Eliza nodded. "And it always will be." Marcus crossed his arms. "And no one else knows." "Not yet," Eliza said. Adrian turned toward them. "That's another choice," he said. Marcus gave a short, dry laugh. "We just made one that binds ancient magic under the entire school, and you're telling me we get another?" "Yes," Eliza said calmly, "because this one affects more than just us." Adrian understood what she meant. "If we tell someone," he said, "the knowledge spreads." "And if we don't," Marcus added, "it stays with us." Eliza looked between them. "Both options have risks." Marcus frowned. "Letting this stay hidden sounds like the bigger one." "Not necessarily," Eliza replied. "If the wrong person learns about it, someone who doesn't understand what we just did, they could try to interfere." Adrian thought of the memory they had seen, of the man who had tried to force the seal open. "They would fail," he said. Eliza met his gaze. "Or they would succeed differently." Silence followed. Marcus shifted slightly. "So what? You want to keep this secret forever?" "No," Eliza said, "but not now. Not until we understand it better." Adrian nodded slowly. "She's right." Marcus looked at both of them, clearly unconvinced, but not dismissing it either. "And what if something happens before then?" Adrian answered. "Then we'll know." Marcus sighed. "Because we're connected to it now." "Yes." The word carried no comfort, only truth. Marcus ran a hand through his hair again, then finally gave a small nod. "Fine," he said. "We keep it between us, for now." Eliza exhaled softly. "That's enough." Adrian looked towards the archway. "Then we leave." This time they moved together. The corridor beyond was no longer the twisted path that had led them down. It was simple, direct, stone walls, steady light, familiar in a way that almost felt strange after everything they had seen. They walked in silence for a while, not because they had nothing to say, but because what mattered had already been said. When they finally reached the upper levels, the air changed. Warmer. Lighter. Normal, the sounds of the castle returned faintly. Distant movement, the quiet hum of a place at rest but not asleep. Marcus glanced around. "Feels smaller," he said. Eliza nodded. "It always does once you know what's beneath it. Adrian stopped near a staircase that would lead them back to their respective houses. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Marcus broke the silence. "So this is it?" Eliza tilted her head slightly. "For now." Adrian looked at both of them. "We answered the call," he said. Marcus gave a half smile. "Yeah, next time maybe we ignore it." Eliza's expression softened slightly. "There will be a next time. Not a warning. Not a fear. A certainty." Adrian nodded. "Yes," he said. "There will." They parted there. Not with ceremony. Not with promises. But with understanding. Each returning to their own path. Their own place in the castle above. And yet, not separate. Because far below, beneath stone and silence, something ancient remained. Not sealed away. Not forgotten. But watched. Held. Balanced. And bound to three who had chosen not power, but responsibility. And as Hogwarts stood beneath the quiet sky, unchanged to those who did not know, the truth rested deep within its foundation. The call had been answered, and the answer would endure. Morning came as it always did. Soft light through tall windows, the murmur of voices returning to life, the familiar rhythm of a castle that had stood for centuries, unchanged in the eyes of those who walked its halls without ever questioning what lay beneath their feet. To everyone else, Hogwarts was the same. To them, it never would be again. Adrian woke before the others in his dormitory. Not suddenly, not with fear, but with awareness. It was faint at first, so faint he thought it might be imagination. A quiet presence, like the memory of a sound, rather than the sound itself. He lay still, staring at the ceiling, listening not with his ears, but with something deeper. It was there. Steady. Unmoving. Not calling. Not asking. Simply existing. He exhaled slowly. The bond had not faded. It had settled. Across the castle, Eliza felt it too. She sat in the Ravenclaw common room, a book open before her that she had not turned a page in for several minutes. Her eyes traced the lines of text without absorbing them. Her thoughts were elsewhere, beneath the pages, beneath the stone, beneath everything. She had tried to ignore it at first. Tried to treat the night before as something contained, something separate from the ordinary world. But it wasn't. It was part of it now. Part of her. She closed the book gently. Not with frustration. With understanding. There would be time to study. But not in the same way as before. Marcus noticed it differently. He didn't wake early. He didn't sit in quiet thought. He noticed it when he stepped into the corridor and paused, just for a second, because something felt off. Not wrong. Not dangerous. But different. Like standing on solid ground and suddenly realizing that what lay beneath it was far deeper than he had ever considered. He shook his head slightly and kept walking. But the awareness stayed with him. By midday, the three of them found each other again. Not by plan. Not by message. But by instinct. The courtyard was quiet, the usual rush between classes slowed by the calm of the day. Students passed by without noticing anything unusual. The castle stood as it always had. Adrian arrived first. Eliza followed moments later. Marcus came last, stopping a few steps away before closing the distance between them. For a moment, none of them spoke. They didn't need to. They could all feel it. "It's stable," Eliza said quietly. Adrian nodded. Yes. Marcus crossed his arms slightly. And we just live with that? For now, Eliza replied. Marcus glanced at the ground briefly. Still feels strange, he admitted. Knowing something like that is just there. Adrian looked toward the castle behind them. It's always been there, he said. We just didn't know. That doesn't make it better, Marcus said. No, Eliza agreed, but it makes it real. A group of younger students passed nearby, laughing about something trivial, completely unaware of the conversation taking place only a few steps away. Marcus watched them go. They'll never know, he said. Adrian followed his gaze. Not unless they have to. Eliza nodded once. That's the point. Silence settled again. But this time it was not heavy. It was steady. Then, something shifted. Not around them. Below. All three felt it at once. A ripple. Small. Subtle. But unmistakable. Adrian's expression sharpened. That wasn't nothing. Eliza's eyes narrowed slightly. No. Marcus straightened. Tell me that's just it. Adjusting. It could be, Eliza said. But, Marcus pressed. But it could also mean the structure is responding. To what? Marcus asked. Adrian answered. To us. The realization settled quickly. The bond was not passive. It was active. Not controlling. Not intrusive. But connected. What did we agree on? Marcus said more seriously now. That it only responds when called, Eliza replied. Adrian shook his head slightly. Or when needed. The ripple did not come again. The castle remained still. Normal. But the awareness did not fade. Marcus exhaled slowly. So we're not just keeping it stable, he said. We're linked to it. Yes, Eliza said. And if something changes, Adrian added, we'll feel it. Marcus gave a short nod. Then we don't ignore it. No, Eliza said. We don't. They stood there a moment longer. 3 students in a courtyard. Nothing unusual to anyone watching. And yet, everything had changed. A bell rang in the distance, signaling the next lesson. Students began to move again, filling the space with the ordinary life of the castle. Marcus glanced toward the sound. We should go, he said. Eliza picked up her book again. Yes. Adrian looked at both of them. Same as before, he said. Marcus gave a faint, knowing smile. Not even close. Eliza returned it slightly. But we pretend. They parted once more. Not because the moment had ended, but because it hadn't. As the day continued, classes resumed, lessons were taught, and nothing seemed out of place. Yet beneath every step, beneath every word spoken in the halls of Hogwarts, something ancient remained. Not asleep, not silent, but held, balanced, and watched by those who had answered when the castle called. And far below, deep within the foundation of stone and magic, the light within the structure pulsed once. Not unstable, not breaking, but aware, waiting for the next moment when it would be needed. The days that followed did not bring peace at once. They brought quiet. And quiet, Adrian had learned, was not the same thing. Hogwarts moved through its ordinary rhythms with all the confidence of a place that had survived generations. Owls arrived at breakfast in flurries of wings and parchment. Lessons began and ended. Doors opened where they should not, and staircases shifted when they pleased. Portraits argued. Suits of armor muttered. Rain brushed the windows one evening and sunlight flooded them the next. To everyone else, the castle was merely alive in the way it had always seemed alive. To Adrian, Eliza, and Marcus, it was something more exact. They felt it now in small ways. A low steadiness beneath the floor in the great hall, like a heartbeat too deep to hear. A subtle tightening in the stones whenever too many spells were cast recklessly in one place. A strange, almost comforting certainty in the oldest corridors, as though the castle itself approved of being noticed at last. They did not speak of it in public. They did not even speak of it often in private. But each of them carried the knowledge differently. Adrian became quieter, though not withdrawn. The weight of his family's shadow had not vanished, but it no longer ruled the way he saw himself. He had stood where one of his ancestors had once tried to take what was not his, and he had chosen otherwise. That did not erase the past. It did something better. It separated him from it. Eliza changed in subtler ways. She still read more than most, still pursued answers with relentless care, but now she stopped where once she would have kept searching. She had learned beneath the castle that knowing everything and understanding what mattered were not the same thing. That lesson stayed with her more firmly than any book ever had. Marcus changed in the simplest and hardest way of all. He paused. Only sometimes. Only briefly. But enough. Enough to think before acting when instinct told him to rush forward. Enough to remember that courage was not always the same as movement. Enough to stand still when stillness was the right answer. None of them would have named these things aloud. But the castle knew. One evening, nearly a week after the night of the call, they found themselves together again. Not by arrangement, not by accident either. They had each drifted, for reasons they might have struggled to explain, toward the same stretch of corridor on the 7th floor, a quiet place not far from a tall window overlooking the dark grounds. The sky beyond the glass was deep blue, fading toward night. The lake was black and still. A few lamps burned far below. Marcus leaned against the wall first, arms folded. "This is getting odd now." Eliza glanced at him. "The part where we keep ending up in the same place?" "Yes." Adrian looked out through the window for a long moment before answering. "It's the castle." Marcus let out a soft breath through his nose. "I was afraid you'd say that." Eliza stepped closer to the window. "Not controlling us," she said, "just guiding." "That is not significantly better," Marcus replied. But there was no real complaint in it. They stood there in companionable silence, looking out over the grounds as twilight deepened. Far across the lawn, Hagrid's hut was only a shadow against darker shadow. The forest beyond remained what it had always been, vast, ancient, and impossible to fully know. At length, Adrian spoke. "It's calmer now." Eliza nodded. "Yes." Marcus looked from one to the other. "You both feel that too?" "Yes," they answered together. He gave a short, resigned laugh. "I'm never going to get used to that." "No," Eliza said softly. "Probably not." The corridor dimmed as the evening light lowered. The torches along the walls flared a little brighter. Somewhere nearby, a portrait snored with theatrical exaggeration. And then, deep below them, something stirred. Not a warning. Not a rupture. A single measured pulse. All three of them straightened at once. Adrian felt it first in his chest, then under his feet. Eliza closed her eyes briefly, listening with that inward focus she had developed since the chamber. Marcus pushed off the wall, instantly alert. "What is it?" he asked. Eliza did not answer immediately, because the feeling changed before she could. It rose, not physically, not through the stones, but through the bond itself. A warmth, a recognition, a wave of quiet certainty so deep and gentle that for one strange moment it seemed the entire castle took the same breath. Adrian opened his eyes slowly. "It's not danger," he said. "No," Eliza whispered. Marcus frowned, still tense. Then what? The answer came not from below, but from around them. The torches steadied. The portraits along the corridor stirred in their frames, then settled again. The stones of the wall beside the window gave off the faintest silver glow, only for a heartbeat before returning to normal. The castle was responding. Not to a threat, to a resolution. Adrian understood first. "It's sealed," he said. "Properly, completely." Eliza turned toward him, and for the first time since that night, there was no strain in her face when she answered. "Yes." Marcus looked between them. "You're sure?" Another pulse moved through the bond. Not strong, not urgent, final. Eliza smiled then. Small, real, unmistakable. "Yes," she repeated. "I'm sure." The truth settled among them, as gentle and solid as stone. The lower trust had accepted the bond. Not conditionally. Not temporarily. Fully. What they had done beneath Hogwarts had held. The ancient source was contained, balanced, and at rest. The castle no longer stood over a failing secret. It stood over a guarded one. Marcus let out a long breath, some quiet tension finally leaving him. "So that's it," he said. Adrian looked out at the dark grounds again. "Yes," he said. "That's it." But Eliza, who understood endings better now than she once had, shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "That's the outcome." Both boys looked at her. She rested one hand lightly against the cold stone beside the window. "The ending," she said, "is what we do next." Marcus tilted his head. "Which is?" Adrian answered before she could. "We keep watch." Simple words. But true. No grand vow followed them, no dramatic oath, no hidden chamber opening once more to mark the moment. There was only the castle, the evening, and the understanding between three students who had gone below it and come back, changed. They would keep the secret. They would answer again if they were needed. And they would live the ordinary days in between, not because those days were lesser, but because they were exactly what had been protected. The safety of the school. The quiet of its nights. The thoughtless laughter of students who did not know how close ancient things had come to waking. Marcus glanced toward the staircase. "I've got an essay due tomorrow," he said, as if annoyed by the very existence of such a thing after all they had survived. "Feels insulting, honestly." Eliza gave a soft laugh. Adrian smiled properly this time. "That," Marcus continued, "is the first reassuring thing anyone has said all week." They turned to go. No magic stopped them. No voice called after them. The corridor remained only a corridor, the castle once more content to let its mysteries sleep where they belonged. At the stair, they paused. Not because they needed to say goodbye, because they understood that this moment mattered. Marcus looked at Adrian first. "You answered the call." Adrian shook his head once. "We all did." Eliza nodded. "That's why it worked." Marcus considered that. then gave the smallest smile. Good. Because I'd rather not do any of that alone. You won't, Adrian said. And that was the final promise. They parted then, Marcus down one staircase, Eliza along the upper corridor, Adrian toward the shadowed turn that would lead him eventually back to the dungeons below the lake. Their footsteps faded. The castle remained. Night deepened fully over Hogwarts. The windows glimmered gold against the dark. The wind moved softly over the towers and crossed the silent water. Somewhere in the distance, an owl cried once into the dark and was answered. Far below all of it, beneath the foundations, beneath the oldest stones, the lower trust rested in perfect stillness. Not broken, not forgotten, bound. And because 3 had answered when the call came, Hogwarts endured, not only as a castle of towers and classrooms, but as what it had always truly been, a place protected not by power alone, but by those willing to choose responsibility when no one else could see. So the school slept. The secret held. And the call, at last, was silent.
Ну що, давайте поговоримо про небезпеку, про ту тиху мить, коли Адріан стояв перед джерелом неймовірної сили і вирішив не простягти руку, щоб заволодіти нею. На перший погляд це майже непомітна деталь, але саме в ній прихований справжній сенс цієї розповіді. Дивіться, я намагався донести те, що дуже часто в житті нас перевіряють не труднощами, а можливостями. Не тим, чи вистачить нам сили щось отримати, а тим, що вистачить мудрості не брати те, що належить не нам. Предок Адріана намагався силою відкрити те, до чого не був готовий. А сам Адріан обрав зовсім інший шлях – не володінням, а відповідальність. Здається, що цей урок, який варто запам'ятати кожному з нас. Справжня зрілість починається не тоді, коли ми можемо щось контролювати, а тоді, коли ми розуміємо межі того, що повинні контролювати. Іноді найважливіше рішення – це зробити крок уперед, а вчасно зупинитися і запитати себе, для чого я це зробив. Бо сила без мети легко стає небезпекою, а відповідність навіть із найменшої людини робить справжнього хранителя. Нехай ця думка залишається з вами сьогоднішнього вечора, і нехай ваші найкращі рішення народжуються не з бажання володіти, а з готовності берегти. Дякую всім за увагу. З вами був Саламандр. До наступних зустрічей.